I never thought the two people I trusted most could betray me in the same breath. That night shattered more than my heart. It burned everything I believed in. My name is Emily Carter. I'm a nurse from Kansas City. I used to fix people's pain. Now I only live with mine, the night I walked in. It was past 10 when I pulled into the driveway. The night shift had ended early, a rare blessing. I remember thinking I might surprise Grace with her favorite takeout. The house was dark, except for the faint light slipping from our bedroom door. As I climbed the stairs, I heard voices. My heart fluttered, not out of fear, but curiosity. Then I heard my father's laugh, soft, familiar, completely out of place. For a second, I thought he must have stopped by for some reason, helping Grace fix the leak in the sink maybe. That's what I told myself to quiet the unease forming in my chest. I pushed the door open, just enough to see. My father's back was to me. Grace was in front of him, half covered, her hand on his shoulder. The sound that came from my throat didn't even feel human. Both of them froze like statues. His shirt was unbuttoned, hers hung off one shoulder. My knees buckled, the takeout bag slipped from my hands. Grace's mouth moved, forming my name, but no sound came out. My father took a step forward, his face pale, lips trembling. I stumbled backward, bumping into the wall, trying to breathe. The room blurred, colors smeared with disbelief. I turned and ran. Cold air hit my face as I burst through the front door. I didn't stop until my legs gave out in the yard. I sat in the grass, rain starting to fall, washing the tears from my cheeks, but not the ache from my chest. I thought of my wedding vow, my mother, everything shattering in one heartbeat. That night, I learned betrayal has a voice, familiar, soft, and cruel all at once. The shattered picture frame, morning came but brought no warmth. The house was silent when I walked inside, leaving muddy prints on the hardwood. The photo of our wedding, the one above the fireplace, had fallen. The frame cracked, glass scattered like snow beneath it. It looked as broken as I felt. I picked it up. Our smiles still gleamed through splinters of glass. Grace came down the stairs, wrapped in one of my sweatshirts, eyes red and swollen. Behind her, my father appeared, dressed, quiet, ashamed. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then I saw the ring still on Grace's finger, the guilt heavy in her movements, the way she couldn't meet my eyes. "Emily," my father said softly. "Let me explain." I put the picture frame on the table and stared at him. "Explain what?" My voice sounded foreign. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Grace stepped forward, but I raised my hand to stop her. "Don't," I said, shaking my head. The world felt still, like we were trapped in a photo ourselves. 3 people in a moment that shouldn't exist. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. My father took another step. "Please," he whispered. "It was a mistake." Something inside me cracked. I pushed past them, glass crunching under my shoes. The rain outside hadn't stopped. I walked barefoot down the street, my phone buzzing in my pocket, ignoring the calls. When I finally looked back, I saw them standing together on the porch. My father and my wife, silhouettes against the gray morning. I turned away, my tears mixing with the rain again. That photo stayed broken on the table for days before I could touch it again, the lie. He told me the next morning I woke to pounding on my door, my head hurt from crying, my eyes swollen. When I opened it, my father stood there holding coffee like nothing had happened. "Emily, please, can we talk?" His voice was tired, softer than I'd ever heard it. I stepped aside wordlessly. Grace was behind him this time, silent, wearing guilt like perfume. He sat down at my kitchen table and began his performance. "It was a mistake," he repeated. "A moment of weakness. It meant nothing." I laughed, a shaky, bitter sound. "Nothing? I found you in my bed with my wife." "Dad!" Grace flinched at the word wife, like it hurt her to hear what she'd broken. My father looked at his hands. "I take full responsibility," he said. "Don't tell your mother, please. She can't handle this." That sentence told me everything I needed to know. He didn't want forgiveness. He wanted silence. "Get out," I said quietly. "Emily." "Get out!" I shouted, slamming my palm against the table so hard the cup toppled. Coffee spilled, running down like blood. Grace grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the door. Before he left, he turned to me. "You'll ruin this family if you say anything, Eyes," he warned. I stood there after they were gone, my chest hollow. Maybe I was the only one who cared enough to feel ruined. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words echoed in my head. Don't tell your mother. Maybe he didn't deserve silence after all. The hidden messages. I spent the next day in a fog, searching for reasons. I found one buried in my old laptop. Grace had used it often when hers died. I clicked through the files until I found the chat logs. When I opened them, my stomach turned. They had talked for months. Private jokes, late-night confessions. My name appeared between their words like a ghost. My father wrote, "She doesn't see me." Grace replied, "I do. You make me feel safe. Safe." That word stabbed harder than any lie. They planned meetings when I worked long shifts. They wrote about me in past tense, as if I had already vanished. I scrolled and scrolled, tears blurring the screen, until rage replaced the pain. I slammed the laptop shut, chest heaving. Then I opened it again and printed everything. I wanted proof. I wanted truth I could hold in my hands. When I confronted Grace that night, she didn't deny it. She said she felt lost, that my father understood her. I couldn't speak. I just stared, because I finally saw her not as my wife, but as my betrayer. The woman I trusted with my heart had traded it for comfort. When she left the house, I hurled the laptop against the wall. It shattered into pieces, cold, empty, and silent, just like me. The family gathering. A week later, Mom called. She wanted everyone home for dinner. "It's been too long," she said. If she only knew. I stared at the phone, torn between laughter and dread, but something inside me whispered, "Go." That evening, I arrived at their house with the calmness only anger can bring. Grace was already there, helping Dad in the kitchen. Laughter floated through the halls like poison. Mom hugged me, her warmth real, unaware of the fire beneath our feet. "You look tired," she said. I smiled and lied. Long shifts. As we sat at the table, I counted every breath. Dad poured the wine. Grace served the roast. The air was thick, flavorless. I forced conversation, false smiles. My plan hadn't formed fully yet, but I knew I wouldn't stay silent much longer. When Dad said, "Emily, aren't you proud of this meal Grace helped make?" Something inside me twisted. I thought about the printed chats locked in my purse. "I'm proud," I said slowly, meeting both their eyes. But pride doesn't always mean peace. Grace's hand trembled slightly on her fork. I saw fear flicker there, and that gave me strength. As Mom laughed, unaware, I made a silent vow. They would never hurt me again. I didn't know how yet, but revenge had already started to write itself in my heart. Secrets in the journal. I couldn't rest after that dinner. Their laughter still echoed in my head. My parents' house always smelled of old wood and lemon polish, and somehow that scent sat heavy in my chest. When Mom went to bed, I slipped quietly into Dad's office. The drawer that used to hold his tax files was locked, but the key was still in the same place, tucked under the photo of our old dog. Inside, I found his journals, rows of neatly written pages. I thought my father was a man of discipline, of order, but page after page told me how wrong I was. He wrote about envy, of my life, my job, even my youth. He wrote about feeling invisible next to me. Then I saw her name, Grace. "I deserve happiness too," he had written. "Emily doesn't see what she has. Grace does." The words stung worse than the betrayal itself. He made my pain sound like a justification for his sin. My hands shook as I flipped through the rest. Cold, detached confessions. I sat on the floor for hours. The clock ticked. Mom's soft snores came from upstairs, unaware of the poison living beside her all these years. I took the journal home, locked it in my drawer, and opened my own notebook. For every line of his, I wrote mine. For every excuse, my truth. My fingers trembled less with every word. I no longer wanted only to expose them. I wanted them to feel the same helpless emptiness they'd given me. Revenge wasn't cruel, I told myself. It was balance. That night, I didn't dream of Grace's face or my father's hands. I dreamed of justice wearing my smile. The recordings, the camera was small, easy to hide. I placed it between two books in the living room, angled perfectly toward the couch. Grace still stopped by some evenings to talk. I said I needed closure. She believed me. When I told Dad that I wanted peace, that I wanted to move past it, his eyes softened with relief. He didn't see the truth hiding behind my calmness. 3 days later, they were alone again. I watched from my phone. Grace sat close to him, her voice soft, her hand on his knee. He leaned in. My pulse beat in my ears, but I didn't cry this time. I hit record. I didn't look away as they kissed. I waited until it happened again. More proof than any words could deny. I copied the files to a secret drive and labeled them simply Truth. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and replayed their guilt until my anger grew quiet. The numbness was new. I welcomed it. Later, I imagined showing Mom, imagined the truth burning through her illusion. But then I realized I didn't want her broken like me. No, this revenge wasn't for anyone else. When I looked in the mirror, my eyes looked colder, clearer. I whispered, almost over. By the end of that week, I had everything I needed to end this story their way. Publicly, painfully, and without mercy. The confrontation, I sent the invitations by text. Family dinner. My place. 7 p.m., sharp, and simple words, no emotion. Mom replied with heart emojis. Grace simply said, okay. Dad didn't respond. When they arrived, I dressed like any other host. The table was set, candles lit, roast in the oven. My smile didn't reach my eyes. But Mom didn't notice. As they sat, I passed the plates, watching their hands tremble. Grace avoided my gaze. Dad cleared his throat and said, we're glad to be here. I know, I said quietly. After a few nervous jokes from Mom, I stood. There's something I want to share before we eat. I pressed the remote and the TV flared to life. Silence filled the room except for the sound of breathing. Then came the video. The living room, their faces, their hands, their betrayal, perfectly caught, perfectly framed. Grace gasped. Emily, no, please! Dad's face drained of color. Mom froze, her fork clattering onto the plate. The air in the room got heavy, like gravity had doubled. Mom turned to him, eyes wide and wet. Tell me this isn't real, she whispered. He couldn't. Grace stood, shaking, her face pale as paper. I'm sorry, she cried. But no one listened. The silence afterward was worse than the screaming that followed. Mom's tears fell like storm rain. I didn't move. I just watched the ruins settle over all of us like dust. When it was done, I quietly said, dinner's ready. No one ate. The fallout. Mom didn't speak for days. Then one morning she called me, her voice hoarse. He's gone, she said. I told him not to come back. Her words carried both rage and grief. Grace left town the next day. She sent no apology, just a short text. I'll give you the divorce papers soon. I laughed when I read it. How strange it felt to laugh again, even at something so final. Neighbors started whispering. The story spread faster than I imagined. Some looked at me with pity, some with awe. I ignored them all. Nights were hardest. The house felt too quiet, too heavy. I caught myself remembering better times, a movie night, a family Christmas. Then I'd remember the truth and breathe again. Mom came over once, her eyes tired but determined. We sat at the kitchen table without words for a long time. Finally, she said, You're stronger than me. I smiled weakly. No, I just hurt longer. Dad called only once after that. I didn't answer. His voice stayed on my voicemail, begging for forgiveness I'd never give. I deleted it without listening through. People say vengeance feels sweet. They're wrong. It tastes like ashes, but it cleanses too. By the end of that week, I realized peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from letting the wreckage lie where it belongs. For the first time, I slept through the night. The burn and the rebirth. Winter came early. The air smelled of wood smoke and frost. I gathered every photo, every souvenir, wedding pictures, family albums, cards written in my father's handwriting. Out in the backyard, I built a small fire. Flames licked eager at the edges of paper, curling faces and smiles into smoke. I whispered their names as I fed each photo to the fire. Grace, Dad, the life I'd lost. The heat touched my cheeks. It didn't hurt. It felt cleansing. This is yours now, I said to the sky, not sure who I meant. The last image to burn was my wedding photo. For a second, I almost saved it, but no, it belonged with the rest of the lies. As the ashes rose, I thought of the woman I'd been, the nurse who believed love could fix anything. She was gone. But in her place stood someone new, someone unbreakable. Mom visited that evening. She didn't ask questions. She just hugged me, quiet and strong. We'll rebuild, she whispered. I nodded. This time, with truth. Later, I stood alone under the stars, breathing in cold air that felt clean again. Forgiveness would come someday. Maybe not for them, but for myself. I had carried pain long enough. When I finally turned to go inside, I glanced once more at the fading smoke. It looked almost like wings, rising, disappearing, and in that moment, I realized I wasn't burning my past. I was freeing it,